Alright, might be a quick video. There's not that much to say, except, the state of things is just so bad because it's like the politics. Unreasonable policy is being attacked by unreasonable policy. I mean, stupid positions from stupid positions. There's no rational wars anywhere. And, this is the sign of the idiocracy, coming for us. This whole idea of dissident science that is worse, okay? Its standards for making a confident statement are worse than the standards they're attacking. So they attack conventional physics for being a bit under-evidenced and a bit closed-minded, and yet they project exactly the same bad standards. No, they're worse standards, actually. Worse. They don't have anything. They haven't done any work to contrive something to hold up their nonsense. So it's just this flat earth kind of crap. The antis end up looking like lunatics. So yeah, I really don't want to bring up politics, but it's like the Democrats becoming now pro-immigration when immigration is the perfect way to drive wages down and ruin the working man's life. And they're doing it just to be naysayers against the other guys. The other guys are against it. At least they're talking like they are. And therefore, they have to go the other way, and they don't do any reasoning at all about what the implications of that are. And so somehow this dissident science means that I can't, yes, conventional science is untrustworthy. They say they've proven what they haven't proven, lots of stuff like that. And his counter response is to do exactly the same thing. Say something has been substantially evidenced or there's some reason to believe when there's no reason to believe, when the evidence is crap, when they haven't done any work to test the theory at all. And so they're just tinfoil hat. They're just people who look like they're motivated by some other purpose than let's find the truth. Like the free energy people or the creationist. And so this has such it looks so much like creationism. Like somehow we're going to deny, reality. So I'm sure the creationists like this idea of screwing around with history to try to make the Earth look 7 days old or something, or 7,000 years old. This is just such a stupid claim. This small Earth crap that the Earth had half the size or half the gravity and had to start even smaller than that, and somehow all the organisms had to evolve in that circumstance. It's just so obviously can't be the right answer. I mean, there are organisms on this planet, a lot of them, especially insects, that we have in the ember, okay, and they haven't changed in hundreds of millions of years. So he's saying that something as radical as a 50% change in gravity, and yet the organisms didn't change at all. Nothing. And it's just so, on its face, this is an extraordinary claim. To claim that somehow the Earth is growing, somehow it's gaining mass, somehow it's eating stuff we can't see. And that, the water comes from inside the Earth, and the oil is made by the Earth, and all kinds of this, just a completely unfounded as even, fun speculation. This is worse than this is worse than flat Earth. Well, it can't really be worse, but it's neck and neck. I mean, it's that bad. This is, being fooled by crop circles or something. I mean, tiny, the shred of indication they're clinging to is so tiny a shred. Oh, look, the original blob on Earth broke into pieces, and if you put all the pieces together, they'll fit around the globe. Yeah, well, if the blob was sort of round, that would be, perfectly sensible. So it's figuring out where the original landmass came from. Maybe the moon didn't have an orbit, 500 million years ago. And if it didn't have an orbit, then the Earth would end up with a blob at one end. It's a little fatter than the rest. So there's lots of, you could just speculate about where it came from, the first continental masses. But anyway, I don't even want to get into those kind of details. But the point is, he just keeps saying stuff, and even if you bring up objections, I mean, months ago I pointed out what would be the atmospheric implications of this huge reduction in gravity, and how do you explain how life evolved in that extreme circumstance? And there was no response, except to say, who knows? I don't know. Whatever. Who cares? It's not my job to demonstrate that there's more than a tiny bit of evidence. So it's just, let's just cling to, Tesla says, so therefore that we can keep hunting for it because Tesla says it exists or something. It's just so bad. It just makes all the dissidents look stupid. So he's called himself Dissident Science. And it's really hypocrisy science. It's really just truther science. It's creation science. It's I have a motivation science. It's not my motivation is let's do the truth thing. He's not presenting a theory of evolution in contrast to the silly fables of religion. He's just providing another wackier religion, an even sillier one. It's actual cartoon characters. There aren't humans, and there's no God figure. There's really Bugs Bunny, and the Holy Ghost is Daffy Duck, and, it's just another silly story based on no evidence, nothing substantial. So he starts his video by pointing out that, there's a published article, a scientific article. It's an article on the guy's own website. All right, it's nothing published anywhere. It's not a scientific article in any sense that you could fairly use that word. It's been published nowhere but his own website. I mean, you don't call everything somebody writes on their own blog a scientific article. It's just bullshit, And then he goes on, and there's no content here except we did some silly analysis where we did our own estimates about how big a dinosaur is, and we figured it's 50% heavier than it should be compared to what? Compared to an iguana? A tortoise? I mean, did you take the bones from a tortoise and figure out that, the tortoise is somehow has 50% more bone mass than a dinosaur? Did you do anything reasonable? No. It's just made up shit. So, I'll read a couple of the comments on his video because they demonstrate exactly, like I said, I've asked the same questions, and they're reasonable questions, and he will provide no answer because this is just a religion. This isn't anything close to science. It's not even close to a scientific theory when, you haven't done any analysis of the 9. I mean, I don't even know how to describe how many consequences there are, right, to half gravity. I mean, if the atmospheric pressure is reduced in half, then water boils at like 90 degrees. That means you probably don't have any standing water. It's all in the air. And if it's in the air, how much of it stays? And then, like even the ocean, how much water, how much oxygen can remain soluble in water with half the atmospheric pressure? And we know kind of, that life evolved in the ocean. The fish are the first organisms. So how did fish work with no oxygen in the water? Why did they have gills? What purpose did the gills serve if there's no way they could breathe oxygen in the water because the oxygen wouldn't be able to be held in the water? I mean, it's just so bad a theory. It's so grossly deformed, underformed, underdeveloped, and it's just like the two-slit experiment for conventional science. All these conclusions they draw, these hard, radical, it's the nail in the coffin evidence, light is a wave, and all this crap based on an assumption based on one appearance. Oh, it looks like waves when there's two slits. Yeah, it doesn't look like waves when there's one. Water waves are more slits. But yeah, when there's two slits, it looks just like it. Just like it, when it doesn't really look anything like it. Right? I mean, the water's going up and down, not on and off. But anyway, it's just as bad. Drawing hard conclusions based on just such thin, weak evidence, and not providing any willingness to be tested, to have somebody ask you, well, what about this experiment or this experiment or this or this or this, and then explain how that somehow doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that there's half the atmospheric pressure and that the atmosphere is twice as thin and everything is twice as hard to access. Or maybe 4 times as hard, right? But it might be an R squared rule in here somewhere. Just so bad. All right, so let me refresh this. And see if there's any new comments. But
hello, this is David Hilser. I am a critical thinker, dissident scientist, and if you are not science woke, then
yeah, you're just a creationist. You're just a poorly motivated, wishful thinker who wishes to propagandize on silly anti-them. That's all you want is some kind of anti-them theory. Alright, so Jeter. One of the most complete sauropod dinosaur skeletons known. So he's just pointing out that it says right in the article that it's only 90% of the skeleton, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, this whole idea that somehow all animals are the same or something. So if you find one animal that has a thin bone, then we'll take that as the norm. Density. So we know that all mammals are probably a lot different than reptiles, in terms of how fancy their bones are, and what they're made to do. I mean, obviously, dinosaurs. You can sort of obviously say it appears pretty obvious that these organisms weren't made for running away, right? They're not gazelles. They didn't need to run away from the lions. So whatever their predators were, apparently they didn't run away from them. They just sort of ignored them. They said, I'll sit on you if you just don't go away. They did. Their size gave them some advantage, clearly. But the advantage wasn't, oh, it's one hell of a swimmer. Well, it might have been swimming. Swimming they might have been able to do. They do look somewhat like the dinosaurs that were living in the ocean. But anyway, alright, so some Lost Horizon 52, aka Debbie. So it's a girl thing again. Great find, David. Thanks so much for alerting us to an article the guy published on his own website. Yeah, scientific paper. So Daniel Lasner. Some implications with this theory is that you would also get lower air pressure at sea level. Yeah, at all levels, around 50% of what it is today. Yes, which is insanely dramatic in the implication. At the same air pressure that you get at 5,574 meters of altitude. So at 15,000 feet, where airplanes fly, in the thin atmosphere, where they fly on purpose because of the thin atmosphere, that would be the atmosphere on the surface of the Earth. So the atmosphere where you have to have a pressurized cabin, okay, plus oxygen, right? That's the atmosphere big giant organisms are going to thrive in. I mean, an atmosphere where you would suffocate. Fact, you would just suffocate. Somehow the dinosaurs did fine. Where we don't find a lot of life exactly today, at least. So it's kind of a very benign way to say it, but yes. So I've asked him exactly the same question, and he's provided nothing as an answer beyond, well, we didn't look into that. So we're confident, but we don't, don't bother me with details. Okay. This is indeed true, then it has huge implications for planetary and moon orbits and are the theory of gravitation and attraction. If it's true, it means, yes, the universe is a cartoon. Okay, Bugs Bunny is sitting on the throne. There's just as much likelihood. It's just can't possibly be true. And we know it just because there is stuff on this earth that's been around a long time. And there's no way it wouldn't have radically changed to the radical changes. So it's just, it should be a non-starter. It should be as, oh, that can't possibly be right. Just as the flat earth. It just can't possibly be right. It just takes a little bit of picking at it. Just a tiny bit. And you'll see that, oh yeah, right, it can't be right. Right, there's no atmosphere. yeah, that's silly. You know, no soluble oxygen. Ah, yeah, that's silly. Can't do that. And you could just go on and on and on about all the reasons. And again, why are they doing this? I mean, dinosaurs they look slow. Okay, they look like they're built like tanks. They're big, thick things. Why are people saying that's unbelievable? And it's not like they're that big, you know. It's not like they're a million times bigger than a human being, you know. They'd have to chew us. They couldn't like just swallow us whole. You know, they're big, but they're not that big. You know, there's great white sharks that are kind of the size of dinosaurs. You know, it's not like they're that extremely bizarrely big. They're big, but they're not that big. You know, where you have to start saying, that can't possibly walk around. It'll be crushed by the gravity. No. So, like I said, just horrible science. It just does us all a disservice. It just makes everybody who understands that conventional science is way under-evidenced, that it's undeveloped, it's undercooked, it's jumped way ahead of the evidence, all the statements I've made. It makes anybody who's making those claims look like an asshole just trying to push a stupid, retarded agenda. You know, this just looks like an agenda, because why would be so horny for this? What's the reason to take a completely, I mean, this isn't even an egg or a sperm. I mean, this isn't even close to being something. And here he is, you know, presenting it as a perfectly valid child. It's junk. And what's his motivation? Again, why? Why is he so horny to break all physics? And that's what it would have to do. You have to break all physics to have some idiotic notion that the Earth is getting bigger. It's just stupid. Anyway. It's just depressing. It's so stupid. So anyway, that's enough. Just tragic. Sad. Just, like I said, just makes this job so much more difficult. All these tinfoil hatters. It's like even Ken Wheeler, right? He got ripped off by... and he's complaining, right? Right. Well, anyway, you know, some guy gave him a free trip to his, you know, silly plantation where he tries to sell hot springs, health cures, and you know, Ken found it deplorably insufficiently sanitary, and decided he had to rush home. And of course, he has, you know, none of that really makes sense, because he could just hang around in town at a hotel for a couple of days and take the flight that was paid for to get back home instead of buying a new ticket, which cost him $600. But anyway, you know, he's always doing sob stories. You know, while he every 2 months spends $15,000 on camera shit. Anyway, but anyway, but it's just this is the state of science, right? It's just a bunch of these people trying to sell crap and promote crap, and they don't have any, it seems, true interest in, let's just find the truth. Yeah. What's the real story? It's all this agenda stories. So anyway, and I guess this Dissident Science guy's agenda is anything but their story. So anything opposing any theory presented by a regular scientist has to be rejected. None of them are true. You know, he doesn't want to go back to Newton. He wants to go back, you know, to 4000 BC and just make up a new fairy story about reality. So anyway, not enough.